Hi, Stephanie Abrams here, dashing through the airport. I'm going on an adventure. I've got my backpack, I've got my laptop, I've got my traveling shoes on. Come along with me. I'm in St. Patrick's country. How cool is that? I am in the Kingdoms of Down. It's even cooler. In County Down in Northern Ireland, in a town called Downpatrick, and I am in the St. Patrick's Centre, where in 2007, I was honored as an honorary friend of St. Patrick by the Centre. And it was actually March 16th, 2007, because on March 17th, the director of the St. Patrick's Centre was flying to London, England, to award to the then mayor of London, England, the same honor that's given to two people each year, I being one of them that year. I was in very cool company. And this center is the only permanent exhibit commemorating the life of Patrick, who is buried just at the top of the hill behind the St. Patrick's Centre in Downpatrick, County Down, Northern Ireland. If you walk out the front door of the center, make a left turn for probably 15, 20 steps, walk up the stairs and up and up and up, you'll be on the main street of the old town of Downpatrick. If you make a left turn, you'll be looking down the road a block or two at Down Cathedral, which looks like, you know that puzzle that the Disney company put out a jillion years ago with the road that's winding up to the Cinderella Castle? Well, that's kind of what it looks like. And if you walk around the left of Down Cathedral, instead of continuing to walk around to the main entrance to the cathedral, which is lovely and you have to sit, walk to your left and you will find a grave that's very significant because there are 3 saints buried in that grave. And we're going to talk about that and the little rhyme that goes with it and the St. Patrick's Centre and all about St. Patrick Country with Dr. Tim Campbell, the director of the St. Patrick's Centre. I'd like to introduce you to my good friend, Tim Campbell. Dr. Tim Campbell was the representative for the St. Patrick's Centre at a Tourism Ireland, the Tourist Board of Ireland, roadshow in February of 2002, and that's where we met. So we've been friends now for a good solid 16 years, just from a chance meeting at that roadshow. And I learned enough at the round table where vendors and directors, heads, representatives of attractions and hotels and venues that would be of interest to travelers would be moving from table to table during the course of an evening. And I got lucky because this was a very big roadshow. And not every one of the representatives got to every table. They split the room in half. So in theory, we might never have met that night if he had been on the other side of the room. But that was a nice memory, meeting you in New Jersey.
16 years ago.
Can you believe it?
My goodness.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the St. Patrick's Centre. You came shortly after that to experience a little bit about St. Patrick in Ireland.
You see how motivating you were. I had to know more. And so maybe you can explain for our viewers and our listeners on radio, what is the St. Patrick's Centre all about? Why is it important? And why should travelers make this a destination they must visit?
Well, we're in March, Stephanie, and it's a great time to visit the St. Patrick's Centre, of course, because millions of people around the world will be starting to celebrate St. Patrick or gearing up for the 17th of March or the closest Saturday to that date. And I always tell people, you celebrate St. Patrick, why can St. Patrick not be a destination as well? So here we have a centre, the only permanent exhibition in the world dedicated to the memory of St. Patrick, right beside St. Patrick's grave in the medieval town of Downpatrick, just a little bit south of Belfast and 2 hours north of Dublin. So it's a wonderful place to come. And you've always been very welcome every time you've been here.
You know, as many times as I've been to the St. Patrick Centre, and centre, by the way, is spelled R-E. So when you go looking for stpatrickcenter.com, they'll probably correct you online, so you'll get it right anyway, but good to start out correct to begin with. But each time I come, I learn something new. I notice something new. I mean, it's ridiculous, because you'd think by now I would have it all down pat. But look at how long it took me to learn the little rhyme about who's buried in the grave just up the hillside beside Down Cathedral. So why don't you recite it?
Well, there are 3 saints buried in the grave of St. Patrick, the national grave of the patron saint of Ireland. We have St. Patrick, who brought Christianity here in 432 AD. We have St. Bridget, whose feast day is in February, and we have St. Columkill, who brought Christianity to Scotland. So we've got the 3 apostles of Ireland all buried in one grave, and they're under a huge slab of granite from the mountains of Mourne. And we have a grave that was gravestone marking that was made up by the original Norman knight Jean de Courcy, who came here in the 1180s, so that people would always remember the 3 saints being buried here and make sure that it was a very important pilgrimage site, which it still is. He said that in Down, which is where we are, in Down one grave 3 saints do fill, Patrick, Bridget, and Columkill.
Only took me, 2 years to learn that whole little rhyme that 4-year-olds learn in a moment. But was it, what was his name?
Columkill?
No, the one in 1060s, 80s.
Oh, Jean de Courcy, yes.
Is he responsible for the slab?
He is responsible actually for building the medieval cathedral. He brought Benedictine monks from Bec in France, and he went a little St. Patrick crazy. Down or Dun comes from fort. So this was the reason Patrick came here in the early 400s. This was the high king of the northern part of Ireland lived in the fort here, and later it was named by Jean de Courcy after Patrick, Downpatrick, the fort of Patrick.
The legend is that people who are going to America, and you know, there's a wonderful play by Martin McDonagh, who at the moment is probably more well known in America than he has been in the past, because he is the screenplay author, composer, writer for the film that Frances McDormand just won as Best Actress in the 3 Billboards movie. Yes. He is someone I have long admired, and I hope I get to meet one day. And he did a trilogy of plays, one of which is called Beauty Queen of Leenane. Yeah. He's done more than that. In Beauty Queen, one of the characters comments about if somebody is going off to America, and the other character replies, "Someone's always leaving Ireland." And it comes to mind because when I saw the play reenacted at Shakespeare and Company in Lenox, Massachusetts, which is about 5 miles from my studio in the heart of Berkshire County in western Massachusetts, there was a talkback after the play, and the director or the actors were there, and in the playbill it said something about someone's always leaving Ireland. And someone asked the question, why is that significant? Clearly there wasn't a person in that audience knew a thing about the history of Ireland and its people. Because there has been always somebody leaving Ireland. And probably the biggest mass movement, I mean, if you discount, was his name John? His name was O'Connor, who founded Tucson, Arizona. Oh, yeah. He was with the Knights, who came over from Malta, the Order of St. John. Yeah. And that was in the 1500s. So clearly he left Ireland long before. But in the 1600s, 1607, when we were settling Jamestown in America, there was the flight of the Earls, who were leaving Western Ireland, the Donegal area, 100 earls and their families, and most of them went to Spain. And pretty much didn't work out real well for them. Wish they had come to America then, that would have been cool. But there are always people who are leaving Ireland, and the connection to St. Patrick is the legend of people coming to St. Patrick's grave to take a bit of the old sod in their pocket with them as a souvenir, and the concern that one day they're going to dig them up because people want to fill their pockets with a little authentic Irish earth to take with them to wherever they're going. When did that happen? That the decision was made to put on this slab that's about, what, half a meter? About 18 inches thick, and the length maybe 5-6 feet long, and maybe 5 feet wide, and on the top it is inscribed, someone chiseled in Patrick. And what is it, 462? 464,
yes, around that time,
So when did that slab go on?
Well, Irish people have a great affinity with the land. They also have a great affinity with body parts. It's a Celtic thing. You know, the Celts, if you went into battle with the Celts, they would lob off your head, bring it home in a bag, you know, because everything from here down is kind of the same, but from here up you look a bit different. So they believed that your soul was in your head, and this later translated into reliquaries and shrines of St. Patrick's hand. There's a shrine of St. Patrick's knee bone. You know, there's different reliquary of his jawbone. So there's...
if they ever put them all together, would they get...
Well, you know, this is, you know, it's like the real cross, you know. So people had this great affinity with a piece of St. Patrick. Literally, people used to go into battle with the staff of St. Patrick and with St. Patrick's crozier. You know, so somehow they felt there was a little bit of translation. So they have done this for years. A lot of religious sites, Clonmacnoise is another famous example, where people would come and take a little bit of earth with them, take a little bit of Ireland away with them, a little bit of the Satron paint.
Clonmacnoise is where you'll find this amazing, massive collection of Celtic crosses in a graveyard right beside the sea. And it's not that far from Athlone in the Republic of Ireland. And so if you drew a bullseye target over Ireland, it would be, Athlone would be your bullseye, dead center, and Clonmacnoise is just a little west and a little south of that. So people would have taken scrips of earth, and what they've done here is the local people got a bit miffed that all these people were coming to take scrips of earth from St. Patrick's grave. There is a photograph of what it looked like a number of years ago before the gravestone was put on. It looked like Mount Vesuvius. So people kept taking scrips of earth. So about 1900 they put the gravestone on top. Got it. So it's fairly recent. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we're going to come back talking with Dr. Tim Campbell, because behind us there is a kind of IMAX fly-through of the Kingdoms of Down, and I'd like to share at least some of that with you while we chat, or while we just give you a moment of no comment. We've got a lot to talk about. Stay tuned for more. I'm with my good friend, Dr. Tim Campbell, at the St. Patrick's Center in County Down, in the town of Downpatrick. Patrick's Fort is the translation. And we're sitting in the theater, which is a wonderful place if you're planning a meeting or a reunion, or you're dragging around a bunch of people that you want to educate. This would be the place to do it. There are also great meeting rooms and whatnot here, but what we're seeing is that Patrick was abducted. He was kidnapped from what's now England and brought to Ireland as a slave. And in this film, we get to see a bit of the history of how Patrick got to Ireland. And then when he left Ireland, did he escape? Was he still a slave, or did they release him?
He was 6 years a shepherd slave in Ireland from the ages of 16 to 22. And during that time he starts to remember his father's faith. His father was a cleric, and he starts to pray on the slopes of Mount Slemish. Now, if you think Liam Neeson, that's where Liam Neeson is from. I always say if there's ever a film about St. Patrick, Liam will probably be St. Patrick himself. So,
do a good job.
Wouldn't he do a good job? Yeah, and it's really good because he's from the same place where Patrick was a shepherd slave, which is about an hour north of Belfast. So Patrick's a shepherd slave for 6 years as a young man, remembers his father's faith, prays, and eventually he believes that God responds and tells him to run away, that a ship has been made ready. Now, in those days there were no roads, there were no cars, there weren't even any towns in Ireland, but Patrick eventually finds his way to the southeastern part of Ireland, hitchhikes with some sailors, and they get him off the island of Ireland.
Wow. So we see in the film that Patrick was clearly literate and had studied, because both his father and grandfather were clerics. Yes?
Yeah, the really interesting thing about this is that if you think of archaeology is where you dig stuff up, history is where you write things down. The history of Ireland begins with St. Patrick. The story of Ireland starts here with the story of St. Patrick himself. And so Patrick guides you through this exhibition.
I forgot to take my Dramamine.
So Patrick takes you through the whole story himself, and he tells you about himself, and it's a really inspiring story. He doesn't like a story about pirates and slavery and redemption, and it's a wonderful story.
Wow. And I suspect that underneath all of that is the connection between Frederick Douglass, the American abolitionist, who was an activist on behalf of American slaves, and his relationship with Daniel O'Connell, who was doing the same thing for the Irish. And They lived at the same time, and they corresponded with one another. And Frederick Douglass actually came over to Ireland to finally meet and commune with Daniel O'Connell, who was like the George Washington of Ireland. But I think a lot of the philosophy of, honestly, I did not take my Dramamine. For those of you who are listening to us on radio, we are in a fly-through over nooks and crannies and goodness, and coves. And I feel like, I hope this plane we're in isn't going to smack into anything. So, but what we're flying over in this case, and now we're at St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin, which is quite gorgeous. But what we were flying over was the whole area that Patrick spent a good deal of time in.
Yes. We were flying over that, and you were mentioning about Patrick being a slave, and of course he is really relevant. He's not just a saint for Ireland, but St. Patrick the slave, he relates to so many modern issues like people trafficking, and now here we are. We've gone all the way down to Dublin. We're in St. Patrick's Cathedral. This flies you to every part of Ireland associated with St. Patrick. It flies you to the top of Croaghpatrick, the holy mountain in the west of Ireland. I remember a group here of elderly people coming not so long ago, and they said if we'd have known we could have flown to the top of it in your audio-visual presentation, we wouldn't have troubled ourselves to actually climb it.
But that's a big deal to do. That's a very spiritual and emotional experience for people to make a pilgrimage to Croaghpatrick.
And we're coming down Strangford Lough now. This is a few miles from Downpatrick, where St. Patrick landed on the Slaney River in 432 AD. And I always tell people, think of 321. Well, this is 432. That's the way to remember it.
Okay.
And he finds his way to this particular stretch of water.
Those birds.
Yeah, actually, do you know, whenever this was filmed 16 years ago or 17 years ago, the people in the bird sanctuary actually complained because this is a helicopter ride. This is way before drones.
Oh, okay.
And now we've come to Saul Church, where Patrick came ashore.
All right. Now, I have learned over my many visits, and there is something very special about Saul, the church in Saul, which is only, a mile or two up the road
Yes.
from the St. Patrick Centre in County Down, in Downpatrick, that church is on the site of where Patrick built the first church in Ireland, but that couldn't be, that's not a 1,600-year-old church now.
Well, the ground plan has never changed. It's the foundation. It's like going to Rome. A lot of the foundations are very, very deep. That has been rebuilt, of course, over the centuries, because it would have started off as a barn. Sabal in Irish means barn. It was a barn that Patrick was given to be the first church. Always been the same ground plan. Created in 432 AD. The other important thing about it is that St. Patrick, we all celebrate St. Patrick's Day on the 17th of March. He died there in that barn, in that space that you can still sit in on the 17th of March.
Wow.
So it's one of these famous thin places where heaven and earth come close together. I take a lot of clerics and groups out there, pilgrimages, and particularly the clerics and priests are always saying, well, this is a thin place, or some people would describe it as a heavy place where the weight of heaven can be felt.
Well, I remember being surprised the first time that I visited the church in Saul, that there's a little notice that every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. there's a mass there.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, they still celebrate.
See, I can make it to midnight mass. 10 a.m. there's a problem.
It's a push.
It's a real problem. I really love the idea. I don't know if it's done here in Ireland and in Northern Ireland much, but in the U.S. it's quite common for churches to have a mass that satisfies the Sunday obligation on Saturdays at 4 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
That's perfect for a person that likes to sleep late. And I'm neither Catholic nor Christian.
Yeah.
But there's something very uplifting about being in a church during a mass or just visiting.
Yeah.
I kind of like to hang out there. I had an Italian Catholic girlfriend, American descendant, growing up, and I used to go with her every Saturday so that she could go to confession and all that. And I used to love to just sit in the church and wait for her. So it's kind of early on for me.
This is Loch Derg, talking of which, you can go on pilgrimage here and fast for 3 days and 3 nights. This was actually, Loch Derg, St. Patrick's Purgatory, was given to the church by Sir Shane Leslie of Castle Leslie fame. This was originally their estate. This was originally part of their estate. St. Patrick's Purgatory, very, very famous because it was a place where medieval knights would come to seek out St. Patrick in the west of Ireland, just on the border of Fermanagh and Donegal.
Now, Shane Leslie was Uncle Jack's father.
That's correct.
Sir John Leslie,
Yep.
who passed away this year will be 2 years. He was 99 and a half when he died.
Yeah.
I think it was April 19th, 2 years ago. And I had no idea.
Yes, so Sir Shane Leslie was originally a Protestant. He became a Catholic, and he gave St. Patrick's Purgatory to the Catholic Church. So it's now a huge pilgrimage site, and people go there. And we're flying now even further west.
With all the time I have spent talking with, hanging out with, enjoying the company of, and interviewing both Sammy Leslie, Uncle Jack's niece, and Mark Leslie, his nephew, it blows me away, whose father was Shane. It blows me away that nobody's ever mentioned that.
Yeah. Yeah. Now we're up Croaghpatrick, a little further west. This is the holy mountain we had mentioned, and there's a particular weekend in June when people walk up to the top of it. The Reek Sunday, it's called, and this is the little church at the top of.
Wow, that's worth the hike.
Isn't it? And this is just a beautiful panoramic.
That view. It looks like the Thousand Islands in New York State.
Well, they say, yeah, Clew Bay is supposed to have 365 islands in it. Clew Bay, County Mayo, near Westport.
Oh.
This is the tallest statue of St. Patrick in the world, which is in Downpatrick.
So let me ask you a question about this. Is this the statue that you can see from Saul?
Yes, exactly. exactly.
How do you get up there?
Well, there's a big car park at the bottom of it, and you can walk up to it.
Oh, good luck.
Yeah,
That's not going to happen.
It was given to the church by a family called Hampton, and in 1932 it was built to be the tallest statue of St. Patrick in the world. And the great thing about it, and it kind of reflects what we do here, is that it's all about bringing communities together. They dressed him in the robes of the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Armagh, the primate of all Ireland, but they carved him with the face of the Protestant Bishop of Dublin, so that everybody could be involved.
Oh, I like that. Okay, there's Patrick's grave.
St. Patrick's grave, yes.
Yep, there on the left, just to the left side of Down Cathedral when you come up to it.
So that's a medieval cathedral of Down, built in the 1180s. The grave, as we have mentioned previously, was put there about 1900 to protect the grave from people taking little scoops of earth whenever they were emigrating, particularly.
Now, was this footage was done after the St. Patrick Centre opened?
No, this was actually before. So this is probably pre-millennium, and this is just showing the celebrations in Dublin. And of course, this is growing and growing all over the world.
Do you know, because of you, I was at the 2002, it could have been 2003, I think it was 2002, St. Patrick's Day Parade in Downpatrick.
Yes.
And for such a little town, there were over 3,000 people there.
Oh, there were at least. I mean, these days we'd probably
maybe
get
there
about...
were 3,000 marching.
Yeah, maybe 3,000 marching, because there's about 10,000 people come to the town. So the town...
That was amazing.
Yeah, it doubles in size, but we are the spiritual home of St. Patrick. So we have, on St. Patrick's morning, we've got a wonderful walk from the first church in Ireland at Saul, and we walk to Down Cathedral. There's a cross-community service, and everybody goes out, and there's a laying of a wreath. So it's a really important day for us.
Well, you mentioned earlier that there's a... relevance to Patrick today, and part of the relevance of Patrick today is also his message of reconciliation. And with the world in every corner, every part of the world so fractured in so many ways, politically, economically, philosophically, the message of Patrick has incredible relevance. I want to thank you for inviting us today. Stay with me, we'll be right back. As we move through the St. Patrick Centre, we go through a series of dioramas that are life-size, and they are meant to explain the story of the voyage, the life, the times of Patrick. And maybe Dr. Tim Campbell can explain to us, what are we looking at here?
Well, Patrick eventually escapes from Ireland when he's 22, and he finds some sailors. They agree to get him off the island. All is well until they become shipwrecked. So we're trying to convey to people the size of ship that Patrick would have been on. He seems to have been shipwrecked on the northern coast of France. And to this day, St. Patrick, because he rescued the sailors by praying and finding some sheep, or pigs, we're not terribly sure which, but he rescues them because he prays, and they arrive and they eat the pigs. He becomes the patron saint of French fishermen, which he still is to this day.
It's fabulous. And all of this we know because it was in writings done by Patrick.
Yes, Patrick tells us quite a lot about himself and what he does. He talks about the sailors. He's a little bit vague on the geography, but we're pretty sure it's the northern part of France, because he later in his works just talks about his brothers in Christ in Gaul, which is the northern part of France.
We've reached another part of the St. Patrick Centre, retelling the story of the life and times of Patrick. You can see from the diorama that Patrick looks quite young there, and he's being manhandled by this fellow with a sword. Dr. Tim, can you give us some insights?
So Patrick is 16. He's lived a very comfortable life. His father was a cleric, and he lives in Roman Britain, probably the southern part of Wales. And he's kidnapped whenever he's 16 because the Roman Empire in the early 400s is disintegrating. And people like this guy who came from Ireland, he was coming over in raiding parties to take prisoners and booty and loot. And Patrick was one of the slaves that was kidnapped at that time and brought back to Ireland, where Patrick was made a slave for 6 years.
I have been at the St. Patrick Center more times than I can count, and every one is memorable. But I have to say, Dr. Tim Campbell, that this is without doubt the most memorable of all of the visits we've ever done. And thank you so much for your generosity of time and sharing with us what the St. Patrick Center is all about. You are a love.
Thank you, Deborah.
Come and visit.
Hugs across the oceans.
Broken microphone, what's the difference?
Who needs a microphone? As long as you have a mouth. Hard to get a word out of her, you know. She'll talk more the next time. Here, I want to know where the gas goes in to fill you up. Oh. This woman will never run on empty, I'll tell you, ever. The Duracell bunny rabbit. Okay, I gotta go.
You gotta come to America. Come this summer.
They said that to Eddie Murphy. Look what happened to him.
I'm so glad that we're able to sit outside in this blazing sunshine, for which I'm going to put on my St. Patrick's Day glasses given to me by my good friend Malachi McCourt just after the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City. Now I can open my eyes and see you. You may not see my eyes, but that's all right. We're in Northern Ireland, a place that most people think the sun never shines. And so if you go to my website at Abrams.com, there are probably 15,000 photos of Ireland there, and probably 45% to 50% are clear sunny skies, and the rest may be a little gray, and lots of rainbow pictures. That's the best part about a drizzle or a rain. When the sun comes out, the rainbows are there galore, and sometimes double rainbows. And if you want to feel like you found the pot of gold at the bottom of the rainbow, then you need to hot-foot it yourself to Derry in Northern Ireland and visit, as I'm doing now, the Beech Hill Country House, a place that I come into and feel like I'm back home. And I'm with Patsy O'Kane, the owner, director, general manager, and chief cook and bottle washer, who makes all things happen in the most hospitable form for the guests here. And you've got a wedding going on today, haven't you?
Yes, we do, Stephanie. We have a big wedding. Big for us, it's about 270 guests, so time is of the essence at the moment. We're not great time.
So if you want to speak fast, you're welcome.
Yeah, that's right.
Talk quickly.
This is an Irish wedding. One half of the wedding party is from Cork, so they like their Guinness and they like to have a good time. So if we're late with the half pints of Guinness and the champagne, well, we'll be tied.
Well, I met some of the guests at breakfast, and in fact, one of the fellows from Tipperary actually has worked for the last 16 years in New York City and lives in Manhattan. Oh, wow. So it's a very eclectic group that we have here. Why don't you give us an overview of what makes the Beech Hill Country House special from the point of view of not only a hospitality offering for guests in food and overnight accommodations, but also historically?
Well, first of all, it's a Georgian residence, and a very special Georgian residence, very elegant. We have lovely surroundings. We have about 50 acres of parkland, woodland, and even the people who lived here, I mean, this was a plantation house, so built by the Skiptons. These Skiptons were English planters, and prior to that, prior to the plantation, it was owned by the O'Cahan clan. And really, just later on this year, we're celebrating the 400th anniversary of the plantation, and that's whenever the Londoners came and settled in Ireland. And I just think this house just oozes in that sort of history and heritage, and it's so important because no matter where you go, you know, there's something talking to you and telling you all about this, whether it be Skiptons or O'Kane's or US Marines or whatever. Just no matter what corner you turn, there's a piece of history there.
Well, the sun slid behind a cloud and is giving me a bit of a break so I can actually make eye contact with you and with Patsy O'Kane, the owner of the Beech Hill Country House. Stay with me, we'll be right back. Now, there is a lot of American history here.
There is a lot of American history, Stephanie. US Marines came here in 1942. There was an advance party that came in 39, but actually Northern Ireland or Derry had really a very significant location during World War II. They talk about the western approaches, and probably if it hadn't have been for Canadian military, Air Force and Navy, US Marines, American military, we wouldn't be sitting here today because Hitler would have made his way up the Foyle with the U-boats. Thankfully that didn't happen. So we have to be very thankful to all these very brave men who protected us during World War II.
And the officers actually made their headquarters here.
They did indeed. The officers lived within the house, and the lesser ranking gentlemen lived in Quonset huts, and you can see a sample of 2 over in the grounds there. I think in total we had about 500 Quonset huts throughout the grounds, about 750 men altogether. So, but Quonset huts were used as hospitals, were used as recreation centres. So, but I'm told about 500. Now later on this year we're opening a genealogy centre dedicated to the US Navy Marines, and we would love to see Canadians, Americans come and view this very special facility that we'll have.
Well, you have a lot of memorabilia here that you've collected over the years and have been donated to you as well. And when do you expect there to be a larger offering to visit in terms of that material, larger than what's currently here in your heritage room?
We think, we're aiming for October, November. And I'm hoping that everyone who's involved in making the project happen will have their job done by that time. But certainly we're planning to have some very senior US Marines come and launch the project and open our new genealogy centre. So that's the plan.
Oh, fantastic.
And we will try and make it happen.
You'll have to let me know when the date is. We certainly would want to know about that. And if we can't actually be here during that time period, we certainly will get you back on the air with us by telephone. In terms of the dining room, I happen to notice a great big new plaque sitting on the entry table that there was an award for best hotel restaurant in Derry.
Correct. That's we got that about a month ago, Stephanie.
Congratulations, and well deserved.
Well deserved. I was just going to say that. Yeah, the Irish Restaurants Association run these awards every year, and we were lucky to get the best hotel restaurant in the county.
One of the things I love about this hotel, because clearly there are other options and choices in and around Derry, but you're so close to being in Derry City, and you're such easy reach to places like Giant's Causeway, that you have the sense of being way out in the countryside, and in fact, it's, 10 minutes or so?
2.5 miles, about, 7 minutes drive.
And 15 minutes, and you're in Buncrana in County Donegal, the beginning of the Inishowen Peninsula.
Correct.
It's a fantastic place to base yourself, isn't it?
It's a very central location, and even with the Irish Open coming up in June, I mean, Derry is just a wonderful place. We're just 40 minutes away, so we're expecting to see many international visitors come for the Irish Open. Certainly there's a lot of expressions of interest around at the moment, so we're really looking forward to a very exciting couple of years.
Exciting couple of years indeed, and it is such a thrill to be back here on yet another glorious sunny day in Northern Ireland. Well, you've got a wedding going on and guests coming and going, and I know we need to cut you loose, so thank you for joining us.
Okay, Stephanie, thank you very much. Okay?
It's been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you. See you later. And we'll see you soon.
And wave goodbye.
Bye, Mark. See ya. Thank you.
Neville McConachie, give us the story of Finn McCool and Granny.
Well, Granny was very fond of whiskey, and she would have been coming home every night, 7 nights a week from Bushmills town. Very, very, well, I don't like to use the word drunk. I would just like to say she was...
Besotted.
She had overindulged maybe. But Granny, when she had overindulged, she sang, she danced, and every night...
She was a happy drunk.
Oh, she was very, very happy.
Because some people, when they are inebriated, are mean drunks and they're not nice.
Oh no, Granny was definitely not mean. But every night when she came back to the Causeway, instead of going into her own house, she always went to Finn's house.
By accident?
I wouldn't say by accident. She went over to see her grandchild. And when she went over to see little Oisín, she was singing and dancing, usually coming home quite late. Oisín was usually in bed, and she kept waking him, Oisín up out of his sleep. So Una, Finn's wife, had just took enough, because she was the one that was left with the problem to get him back to sleep. So she said to Finn, Finn, you've got to stop her. You've got to tell her she's got to stop coming here or else stop drinking. It's one of the two. So Finn, he spoke to Granny one night when she was there with a drop of drink in her, and Granny got very argumentative. She started to argue with Finn. And Finn, being Finn, he lost his temper with Granny, and he warned her. He says, Granny, come back here again in that state and I will put a curse on you. And he had magical powers. So Granny knew that he didn't make idle threats, so she promised she would go off the drink, and she did, and she done very well. She was off it for 1 week. After 1 week, she fell off the wagon. She landed back in Bushmills. She got a little bit, well, as we say, snookered again. She landed back at the Causeway and done the exact same thing again. She headed to Finn's house and she woke the child again. Finn lost his temper. He chased her out of the house. Granny was weer than Finn. And she was light on her feet, even though she was a little bit happy. She scampered away as quick as she could go, and she ran round Port Noffer, around Port Ganny, and she was heading up the first stucken. And Stephanie, you've been at the Causeway. The stuckens are like this. So she got over the first one and went into the dip, and she started to climb the second one to head into her house. She was nearly at the door, and Finn reached out his arm and he grabbed her by the ankle, and he cursed her and he turned her to stone. And to this day, if you stand at the Causeway stones themselves and look back on the Great Stucken, you will see the silhouette of an old lady making her way up the hill. And there's two morals go with that story. One is probably quite sensible. Don't ever take a giant lightly when he warns you about something. You know, don't underestimate him, because he will carry out what he's threatened to do. And number two is probably the most important. If you drink too much whiskey,
you're going to get stoned.
You're going to get stoned, Stephanie. You're absolutely correct.
I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure. I am so happy that you're with me here. And here is the Causeway Hotel, a gem of a place. I have with me Deborah Galloway. She is the operations director for the Causeway Hotel. And we're going to talk about what it's like to visit here for an hour or more, or a day or more, as a guest at the hotel. From the moment you arrive, it's like, you know, coming back to your own house.
Yeah, that's how I would describe it. It's just like coming home, and that's what I want the guests to feel when they're coming here. So it's so warm and welcoming that they just feel like they're coming home and they can relax and just chill and do whatever they need to do.
How many total accommodations are there?
We've got 28 bedrooms, and they're a mixture of doubles, sea views, family rooms, so we can cater for everybody.
Among my favourite rooms are the newer ones that were added on to this existing country house.
Yep.
And many of them have doors from the bedroom off onto a patio that overlooks the sea.
Yep.
The best sunsets, by the way.
Yeah, they're good rooms, aren't they?
You know, and if you look on a clear day, you'll see Maine.
Yeah.
If you were not overnighting at the Causeway Hotel, what would you want to avail yourself of here to experience?
Yep. Well, obviously we've got our bar. We're in the parlour at the moment, which we would use for private dining, christenings, anniversary dinners.
And high tea.
And high tea. Well, we've got our nice new room upstairs now, the drawing room for afternoon tea. And it's been recently refurbed. We've got our main dining room that can cater for up to 200 guests. So it's busy little spot. It's busier than it looks from the outside. It's bigger as well. So
oh, it is. It's deceptively small looking on the
TARDIS,
outside.
yep.
You enter what you think looks like a small
Yep.
cottage, and it keeps unfolding.
It does.
It keeps revealing more and more of itself as
It does
you.
indeed, as you've mentioned, the new bedrooms out the back as well. So we've nearly finished the refurb. Still little bits and bobs to do. We've got nice furniture ordered for the terraces out the back for those bedrooms, so you can sit and have a glass of wine and watch
At
the
what
sunset.
time of year do you put out the patio furniture?
We'll not put them out until the summer, till springtime, summer. But we're getting nice heavy wrought iron stuff so that hopefully it'll not get blown away with the wind. There's a certain corner just when you hit sort of Bushmills village, you can see the cliff edge and you can see that's the first time you'll see the hotel. And it just is picturesque. It's just like you're looking at a postcard picture. And you can see it then the whole way up the lane. And as soon as you come around the corner, just down the lane there, all you'll see is the ocean.
You do everything from the kind of casual pub.
Yeah, if you just want to
Light
come in
fare.
and have a bowl of soup, chowder, stew, if you're in a hurry, coffee, scone, and then in the evenings or even at lunchtime you can get a more substantial meal. So we cater for everybody.
Well, I hope you'll all put on your must-visit list Giant's Causeway, County Antrim, and book yourselves in at the Causeway Hotel, or at least stop by for a snack, a meal, a pint, something that makes you happy. Where did the hour go? Come back next week. Gotta fly now.